That's me and this chap here, the founder of the business, who's just rushed from one of his presentations on the Investor Roadshow following our results this week. This is an introduction to EnSilica. Some of you may have seen it before. So we aspire to be the premier application-specific chip maker in Europe, and with Mr. Trump arriving, we think that's quite prescient. We are shaping better futures through innovative semiconductor solutions by developing first-of-a-kind solutions for first-of-a-kind products. A little bit of brief there about growth. With 25 million revenue in financial year 24, we're a May year end, so that's last May, and 42% of CAGR from 21 to 24. Our business model. Do you want to talk?
Yeah. I'll do the business model. So, we're what's called a sort of fabless chip manufacturer. So, we don't have a foundry. A foundry is where they make the chip wafers. So we use the likes of TSMC and global foundries for manufacturing those. And then those wafers, we send them off to another place called a outsource assembly and test for testing and packaging. And then we sell the chips. So there's, our assets are our people. We've got some highly talented people that design these innovative chips. We're 175 staff in the UK, Brazil, India. And we have an excellent track record of designing some of the world's most complex silicon chips. IP, which that's intellectual property, that's the know-how, the designs that we reuse from chip to chip. We have a strong portfolio of that, which includes things like cryptography, which is used across lots of designs, radar, analog sensing, and something called millimeter wave and beamforming. And when we cover some of the markets, I'll go through those later. Customers are one of our assets. We've got some great customers. Public customers are things like Siemens. But we'll talk about some other customers that we've got. But it's a really world-class customer base, and also suppliers and assets. You've got to build up relationships with these large foundries and OSATs to get direct access to them. And we've got a world-class supply chain. We've got 4 focus markets. One of them is satellite and terrestrial communications. The other one's automotive, industrial, and healthcare. And I'll walk you through those later in the presentation. Our revenue is split into really 2 parts. One is that of we get for designing the chip, and as a legacy business, we came from a consulting business selling our time, and then we moved into this fabless business where we get reoccurring revenue from selling the chip. So we get paid for designing the chip, and that's called NRE, non-recurring engineering fees. And then we have the legacy business, which is the consultancy. And the real interesting part is the supply revenue, which is really the chip sales, what we get from selling the chips, or a royalty per chip manufactured. Just to sort of talk you through that model. So it generally takes 2 to 3 years from sort of first concept to getting a product into volume production with a chip that we've designed. And then that supply revenue in the markets that we target will go on for 7 to 10 years. So giving you really, really good visibility on reoccurring revenue. So that portfolio of chips that we have in supply really, creates. At the moment we've got 4 chips in the supply phase and 12 in the design phase, and that really spreads our risk between the markets, and also some of the chips over deliver, some of them under deliver, so creating a portfolio effect. And strong IP leads to high gross margins on those chips. So generally it's sort of 35% upwards on the supply of chips as a gross margin.
This graph illustrates what Ian has just been saying. So the light blue blocks on the left hand. The light blue boxes on the left hand side are the design phase of making the chip. The grey boxes are the tape out part of the process, which is when we send it to the foundry to be made. And the dark blue is how revenues accrue each year as every new contract gets layered on the previous contracts we've got. This is a little bit out of date now. We've got 2 more in the dark blue now that we've got to 2025, and this is the essence of the model. Every year we do 2 or 3 new chips, and those revenues will last for 7 to 10 years, and they're adding to each other as you go. So after 3 or 4 years, your recurring annual revenues are quite high, and that's quite an interesting. And the cash flows are good, so that it's quite an illustrative way to put it. So I've put this earlier than we do normally because I thought this is what you really want to talk about. So we've announced our half-year results this week, and this presentation is not going to be about the results. If you want to talk about the results, we've organised an IMC meeting on Friday afternoon, which you can register for, and the CFO will give you all the details on the numbers. So I am going to do one slide just to talk about the numbers briefly, but we're not going to go into detail. As we illustrated on the graph before, as chip supply revenues grow, cash generation will support future investment. And there'll be a question later, I'm sure, about whether we're going to do another raise, because everyone asked me that question. So I got the answer for that already. It's no, by the way. But the supply revenues will build and are building. We're going to talk about how they're building in a moment. And that will generate the cash that will allow us to do further investment. We'll talk about that as we get to it. So our ambitions as opposed to our forecast. This is not a forecast, but we thought we'd share with you what we think, so you've got an idea where we think we're going. So our ambitions for the medium term, that is 3 to 5 years, is that we will achieve recurring chip revenues that exceed £60 million. Last year we turned over £24 million, £25 million. Can't tell you what 25 is, talk about that in a minute. But we think in 3 to 5 years' time, we'll be turning over 100 million. And we can see the visibility of that now. Those dark blue boxes, that's the visibility of your future revenues. So we're pretty confident. And I'll give you a number for the total of that in just a moment. And then over 6 years, we can genuinely see visibility that will possibly give us £100 million revenue per annum. And we know who the customers are. We can't guarantee that they will order exactly what they say they were going to do in the contract, but they're not going to say none, and some will do more and some will do less. And we've sort of, you can do a calculation. We think we can see 100 million revenue. So despite what you might hear, we see the global chip cycle moving ahead positively in 25, 26. We're very busy. We've got lots to do and we've got a lot of inquiries. But although the events around us will create an uncertainty, that's inevitable. Mr. Trump's doing his best, which we're very grateful for. But we consider our supply order book is sufficiently diverse and deep to give us some protection against those uncertainties. In fact, our biggest challenge, which again we'll talk about in a while, is attracting the qualified engineers that we need to meet the demand that we've got. Do you want to do this? I'll do this.
Yeah.
So briefly then on first half of this financial year, some numbers. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I say you can get the full-blown experience on Friday afternoon. Revenues are flat. EBITDA is down a little bit, but chip supply revenues increased by 264%, and that's what we're really focusing on. To get to £100 million of revenue in 5, 6, 7 years' time, we need to get our recurring revenues up. And this year, we've managed to achieve 264% increase, and we can see it getting better and better. So we're quite pleased with these results because our core, what we're trying to achieve, is doing well. We also think that in the second half, it'll be a good second half. We've got good visibility on what we're doing. So we still think we're going to do this year's numbers, even though it's very back-end loaded. But there's some big chunks coming through in the next 2 or 3 months, and we're reasonably confident we will do our numbers. So during the year, during the half year, we had 5 new design and chip supply wins, £29 million of NRE, and some of that £29 million will be what's supporting the revenues and profits in the second half of the year. And 46 million of chip supply came with those contracts. They'll be the dark blue boxes in years to come. So we've now got 4 chips now in supply, 12 in design, and we've got visibility on those contracts alone over the next 7 to 10 years of £185 million. We can see where that's coming from. We know which customers it'll come from. And you might have noticed, if you're following the company, that last year we refinanced our debt and we now got a bigger facility with Lloyds Bank, which is why we're confident that we won't be raising any money. So do you want to pop through this?
Yes, yeah, go on. So, the chip supply revenue, that's the key KPI. That's really the whole change of business model away from consultancy was to drive the chip supply revenue. So, we're very pleased with the growth of that, and we see it, being able to get the 6 million this year, doubling the next year, and continuing on with very high growth. As Mark said, we had 5. Just in the first half year, we had 5 contract wins. One of those was a second design win with Siemens doing industrial automation. That's a great name to have on your customer book. That's a second design win with that. Those 5 design wins will underpin the revenue for 25, 26. And really see sharp growth in the chip supply revenue from 2027. One of the other things we're very proud of, we've got a contract with a prestigious supplier of power and propulsion systems. You can Google that and see where it takes you.
If you Google those words, you'll get the customer.
This is likely to lead to a further design contract and very long-term chip supply contract. We also secured a 10 million funding from the UK Space Agency, and I'll cover more details of that when we get on to the market, the communications market. So, okay, on the communications market, if you take the FT this Sunday, they did a really good article on space-based communications. And there's a massive amount of investment going into that sector, and Elon Musk has really proved that space-based internet is a necessity in terms of being connected. So in times, it's not just about having poor coverage through your normal cellular phone. It's about having a resilient coverage. In time of whether it's in time of war or natural disaster, you need an internet. You need an internet connection, and really the lower Earth orbit based internet connection is something that he's proved works. And there are a number of other constellations coming out, including one from the EU called IRIS-2, and probably people have heard of OneWeb as well. They're all producing constellations to offer an alternative to Starlink. So this is a sector where we've done a lot of work. We've been working in it since 2018, had a number of contracts from the European Space Agency, and we have some lead customers on those contracts. And our work has been recognised by the UK Space Agency, and they've provided us 10 million of funding to improve our competitiveness within this, excuse the pun, within this space. Yeah. So we've also, if you go back to that article I talked about in the FT, they talked about AST Space Mobile. They're doing a space-based internet network that basically has very large satellites that can talk to standard mobile phones. So that's used for really filling in the coverage and giving you high bandwidth connectivity. So we're working with them. That's public. We're doing their payload ASIC, and that's a very sort of novel ASIC, giving tenfold performance. So we're very active in working on what they call the user terminals, the things that every subscriber has, and there's enormous volume potential for these. If you take Starlink, they've got 4 million subscribers. There's about 600 chips in each one. There's billions of dollars of silicon value in those, to provide those user terminals. And also, you've got the chips going into the satellites. So as well as the what they call the sort of non-terrestrial communication space, we're also working in the terrestrial communication space, and we have a contract worth 30 million with an Italian company called SIA Microelettronica to develop a point-to-point microwave link modem chip. So very exciting, and we've been in the news quite a bit around the work we've been doing there. So one of the other sectors, the automotive sector. I mean, everyone knows the contents of the chip content per car is going up, and that's driven by electrification, enhanced safety features, and things like infotainment and new cybersecurity. We've got some niches in this area. So when you're developing chips, not all of the chips the same. You have to sort of pick your niches, build your IP around that, make yourself a lot more competitive. Ours are around motor controllers, actuators, sensor interfaces. As an example, we've got a chip in full-scale production. It shipped 5 million. That's worth 40 million over 6 years. Mark talked about the sort of portfolio effect. I mean, initially we thought that was worth about 25 million over the lifetime of the chip, and that's increased because it's gone in extra models. And a very similar chip we announced in October, a design win, which is around another actuator motor controller, 31 million for 7 years. Most of that is supplied by us. So these are really big contracts, delivering long-term reoccurring revenues. I mean, the industrial area, very similar in some ways to automotive. The customers talk German, similar quality requirements and qualification requirements. And this is around intelligent automotive systems, making production lines more efficient, more precise. So there's now AI going in those, and new cyber security requirements. We announced a second design win with Siemens, and our first design win is now we've now have our production orders, and that's worth 30 million over 7 years. We also have a timing control ASIC. This is sort of leveraging some of the technology we did from the communication sector for precision timing, and that's worth a contract worth 30 million over 10 years. We've got a full RFQ pipeline we're working through for other industrial ASICs. So it's a very active sector, as I said, with a lot of redesigning going on because of those AI and cyber security changes. I mean, the healthcare sector is one where we have a lot of expertise and IP. And this is around making sort of smart sensing devices. I mean, it's one because of the long time to revenue, because of things like the certification process, and we've put less focus on. And also, we do have some capital constraints, which means we've moved. We've focused on those which are going to drive the nearer term revenues up. But we do have core IP and expertise in that area, and it is it's a good growth sector.
So I put this slide in the presentation because I thought this is where you're going to ask the questions anyway, so I might as well address them at the start. And I don't think you've seen this slide, have you? So I thought someone might ask us what the impact of DeepSeek is, and the answer is nothing at all. AI is an impactor for us, and we'll talk about that, but DeepSeek is just another AI company. So no threat from that particularly. But do you want to?
Well, it's probably more of an opportunity. I mean, what DeepSeek allows you to do is basically run AI on a less complex chip. So rather than running it on, you have these various technologies. The latest technology which they're working on at the moment is 2 nanometer. You've got some chips coming out in 3 nanometer and 5 nanometer. I mean, DeepSeek have really proved you can run these AI algorithms on these mature technology chips, and that means you can actually run them on things like edge applications, where rather than running them in the cloud, you can run them in the edge and make decisions in real time without having the internet connectivity. So I mean, that's great to see. And I mean, the other thing is AI itself. Because you need a lot of silicon to be able to process the data, whether it's DeepSeek or not. That means the average price per chip's going up because there's more silicon being used per chip. So both of them are great opportunities for us.
So then, talking about Mr. Trump and his tariffs, Right now, we don't think the tariffs are going to impact on us for two principal reasons. First of all is the geography of our revenues. We don't really sell much product to the United States. We have one customer, which you've mentioned already, AST, but we don't sell a product to them. We charge them a royalty, which I don't think you tariff. So we think from a geographical point of view, we will not get hit by the tariffs. And if we do, in the one case, we got royalties rather than supply. And then inevitably, I foresaw questions about cash flow. People know our history. We've raised cash 2 or 3 times for growth. And everyone's worried about it. You only have to read the bulletin board to see that everyone's worried about it, and all our institutions talk to us. We've obviously reworked our banking facilities last October, which gave us extra facility. We manage the cash very tightly, and we are confident that providing the world doesn't implode, we have got enough cash to get us through to the end of the year and well beyond, when the contracts that we have won in the last 4, 5, 6 months will start to generate cash flows as well. So we don't have any plans to do a further raise at this time. As far as the outturn for the year is concerned, it's very back-ended, second half, but we think we'll do it. It was always going to be a second half year, if I can put it that way. We've got a number of big contracts that will get invoiced in the second half, and we think we'll get to our numbers. And then just to wind up, growing portfolio of supply chips, generating strong recurring revenues. We've shown you our aspirations with regard to where that will get to. We've got contracted design values of $37.5 million. This is important, this one here. £431 million of sales opportunities in the pipeline, and over to this side here, the visibility on 241 million of future lifetime supply revenues. Those are contracts that we have signed already. Those are the indication of the revenues that we're going to get from them. So that's over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. 241 million. We know those customers already. So we think there's a lot of strength in the future for us, and we are getting very close to the point now where those revenues will start to grow quite dramatically. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's very good. Very good.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm just going to borrow that for a minute, Mark. Any questions for Mark or Ian?
Mark, you said you definitely won't be doing a share placing again, which is good. Does that take into account the fact that I think one of your previous share placings was to let founding shareholders out? So it was a secondary. Are the people who want out now out?
The answer to that is...
Sorry.
The answer, honestly, to that is it changes every day. So they have sold some shares. They are not banging on my door to sell any more. They also think we're undervalued, so they're quite happy to stay in for the ride for value. Inevitably, they will sell one day, but there's no pressure right now. We have got one individual who's sold rather more than the others, but he has got cancer and needs the money, so we felt that was okay. But generally speaking, I don't get a lot of pressure, and I'm the guy that sort of controls it. I'm not saying get no pressure, but it's small amounts. And the government have helped by reducing the capital gains tax allowance because they don't want to pay the tax.
If you suddenly had £100 million plus opportunities all come along in, say, March or April, would you have enough working capital to further develop those, or would you raise from the markets?
Yeah, my standard caveat, which I didn't mention, is right. I mean, we had an opportunity nearly 2 years ago now to partake of a $200 million contract with Siemens, actually. And we got through to the final bidding round, and it was a Dutch auction. And it kept going down, of course, as it inevitably does. And we pulled out because we thought the capital requirement got too large. So if there's a very big opportunity and we think it fits and we can do it, then yes, the caveat is we would then ask the market for money. But I think most people would be pleased that we did that, I think.
Thank you. Any more?
Hello, I've come to the front so that you can have the microphone if you need. Right, so I'm not 100% clear on your business model. You say you're a chip maker, but you're fabless. I think I understand you've got a mixture of you hold some stock for some customers, so you get them made for you and then hold the stock and then you sell from stock. And then some of it is just pure IP, so they're embeddable cores. And just to confirm, you don't have any, you don't have any ISA or anything like that, like ARM do. If you could just clarify that. Oh, you're okay then.
Yeah, so
You don't need it.
yeah, I mean, in terms of the revenue streams we have are the one of selling the chips. Because most of those are custom chips, we don't keep a stock. If we have to keep a stock, I mean, it's basically it's buffer stock for a customer, and they're liable for that. So we're not left holding it. And then on the IP side, I mean, we do generate IP, and if we see opportunities where we can license that to non-competing semiconductor companies, we do that. I mean, for instance, we've got a post-quantum cryptography core, so that's one of our expertise area. We develop that for use in our own chips, but we've also licensed it to some of the large.
So that would be an embeddable core, would it? That's an embeddable core or some sort of embeddable IP. It's not a whole chip.
Component that goes into a chip.
Yeah.
A bit like the ARM model, but really, I mean, our focus is on building the supply, building the supply business.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one quick other one. Sorry. So I wanted to know if you had any subsidies, and maybe if you think the answer is no, if you could talk about this UK Space Agency contract, whether that was kind of a backdoor subsidy.
Well, no, it's a front door subsidy. I mean, it's a grant. Yes, yeah. It is a grant, and the UK Space Agency they have the program CBO where they're trying to generate an ecosystem of companies developing technology for low Earth orbit. And there was a competition. We have a 50% subsidy grant, so basically 10 million to make us more competitive in this area. And this is happening in Europe and the US. You've heard of the Chip Act, so it's quite common here to provide a subsidy for for these advanced technology areas to move forward your position.
Most of my questions were asked, so he covered most of my questions. So I think more splendidly than I would have. So just to understand, follow on to that question was, so if you're fabless, you get foundries making the chips, do you provide the software or the IP on that for the 4 industries that you talked about, the automotive, industrial? Is that what is built on this chip? That's your own IP?
It's not really software. So a sort of chip is made out of reusable blocks. And so one of those blocks would be a processor, and you go to ARM and license that from ARM. And you may have heard of Alpha Wave. So there's certain bits of IP you can get from them. But we also have our own portfolio of IP that we reuse from chip to chip. And that's how we sort of differentiate ourselves by, for those particular markets, we have bits of IP building blocks which are used in the chip to improve our efficiency, help differentiate us. But also we end up doing some sort of full custom designs, and normally we structure our contracts that we accumulate that IP. So every chip we do, we generate IP, and then we can reuse it on other chips. So that, having strong IP and the strong build blocks, that's how we get good gross margins on our devices.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions yet?
Hello. I was just wondering, by the time you're doing 100 million turnover a year and you're chucking out piles of cash, is it a situation where the bigger you get, the more chips you're going to have in the design phase? Is it sort of, does it? It doesn't. There's no logic there.
What we found since IPO is the model that we started with was to win 2 new design contracts to get done 5 this week.
Could you say that again?
Oh, sorry. So I need to say that again. So it doesn't follow that we will do more contracts, but the evidence we've had since IPO is that we will do. But I don't think it necessarily follows that. It's not simply just getting bigger. The chips might get bigger, it could be any of those.
I mean, the revenue is scaling through the chip supply and not the number of designers. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Any more? One more.
Thanks for the presentation. You're a very technical company with a lot of highly skilled engineers. So how do you, and there is a lot of competition for these engineers, so how do you attract and retain engineers?
I mean, we provide very, very interesting work. I mean, as Mark said, we do first of a kind chips for first of a kind products, and the best way to retain engineers is to give them really interesting work. Other thing, you have to pay them well, which we do, and most of them are all in the equity as well, which helps retain them. So
They also don't want to sell because they think it's the business is further.
So I mean, it's in terms of the type of work we give them, it's very good quality work, very interesting, and attracts the best people.
What's the split between UK and India and other countries in terms of engineering?
So we've got 30 odd engineers in Brazil, about the same number in India, maybe slightly less, 28 in India, and the balance is in the UK. In Sheffield, Bristol and Oxford. And in that balance, which is about 105, there'll be about 10 admin people. So about 90 engineers based in the UK.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just check online. No, nobody's typed anything in online. I can still see they're still watching, but they're not interested enough to ask a question. Just one for me. I think you're predicting to break even this year and make a small net profit, aren't you? Is that right? Still confident? Yeah. Okay. I was just checking. And what's the typical ramp on the launched chips in terms of revenue? Is there a kind of a typical curve they go through once they've gone into sales?
I mean, it always takes it always takes a bit of time for them to go through. I mean, a lot depends on the market. So things like automotive, they start off with the high-end models.
So if you look at the ones that you've already in post-launch, what are they?
I mean, a lot depends on the market, but it could take, say, 3 years to get up to the full level of supply for a chip. Yeah, and then it will run. Then it will run for 5 years, and then there'll be a tail off.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, some of them keep running.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. And the capex that you're putting on the capex is ramping up as fast as, if not faster than, the cash flow at the moment. What's driving that? Is that all man hours on development, or are there other things in that capex?
There are 2 major components. One is man hours, engineers' time, and the other is tooling that we use to help the design process, which we buy from Cadence or mainly Cadence.
Yeah, Cadence, Synopsys.
Synopsys, yeah.
What's the typical split over the whole portfolio?
Oh, I would think the labour cost is at least 70%, maybe. Yeah, 70%, I would think.
Okay. Right. Any more questions? We done? Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the end of the show for now. We've got the refreshments in the room next door on the left. But in the meantime, thanks Mark and thanks Ian for your presentation on EnSilica. Good to see you again. Right.